Hello and welcome to Really Cool People, a podcast produced by Schweitzer Church. I'm your host, Jason Leininger. This is a place to hear stories of really cool people. The hope is that as you and I hear these stories, we'll be inspired, encouraged, and challenged through moments of serendipity. In a sermon entitled The Weight of Glory, C.S. Lewis said, "There are no ordinary people. You and I have never talked to a mere mortal." It's my joy over the next few moments to introduce you to someone who, in their own eyes, may seem somewhat ordinary, but when you look at them and you hear their story, you find out that they are a really cool person. Today, we're going to meet Elda Layman, born in 1931 in Douglas County, and she went to school in Ava, Missouri. She would get married. She'd move a number of places. She's got a couple of kids and a number of grandkids and a number of great-grandkids. She describes her life as being blessed, really blessed. She's got a great story and an even better laugh. So I invite you, wherever you're at, to listen closely to Elda's story. Well, today we're happy to welcome Elda Layman into the studio. Welcome, Elda.
Good morning, and thank you, Jason. I'm happy to be here. I'm Elda Douglas Layman. I was born Elda Faye Sell, S-E-L-L. I always have to say it's like something you sell. And I was born in Douglas County in 1931 to Rule and Edna Sell, my wonderful parents that I was blessed to be born to. I have one sister who is now 97, and she lives in Pennsylvania. All I can do is speak with her on the phone, but we can laugh and we can talk and we can reminisce of our lives in Douglas County. It's been a joy. It was a joy living there for the years that I was there. I went to school in Ava, Missouri, the only high school that was in the county. And in my class, there was 124 students there. And I had lovely friends there. There were 7 girls. We ran around together, and we went to church together. We went to church camps of a summer together. We went to music contests together, and we were just close friends. And those of us who are still living, we still contact each other and talk on the phone, or sometimes we get together for lunch. But I had a wonderful life in our little town of Ava. They tell us that our intelligence was so bad that they had first given the town a long name. And so when we could not spell it, they gave us the name of Ava, A-V-A. Now, I do not know if that is true or not, but it's a good story. Anyway, I graduated from high school, and I went a half a year to SMS at that time, and then I met my first husband, Leonard Douglas, and I met him at church, and I can remember thinking, that is the man I'm going to marry. And by golly, I did. And so we've had 55 wonderful years together. And my husband died of many strokes. Then after a couple of years, I met another gentleman. He and I dated in high school. And we met also at church camp, where he was a lifeguard and I was a counselor. And he lived in Marshfield. I lived in Ava, and so we didn't get to see each other too much. But we too went to church camp of a summer, Mount Sequoia. I'm sure some of you have heard of that camp. And after about a year and a half, Fred and I married, and we had 12 wonderful years together, and he too died of a stroke. So my life has been normal. It's been extremely happy, but I am thankful to be able to say that I had wonderful Christian parents who raised my sister and I in Christian home and the belief in Jesus Christ. And for me, that's a blessing that I shall always remember. Leonard and I, my first husband and I, we had 2 children. Chris Douglas, who has, when he retired from military, now lives in Ozark. My daughter and her husband, Donald, is a Lutheran pastor, Missouri Synod Lutheran pastor, and they live in Wisconsin. So I do not get to see my daughter as much, but I do see Chris in Georgia, and both my children are a joy to my life. I have 5 wonderful grandchildren and 12 great-grandchildren and 1 great-great-granddaughter. And they bring lots of joy to me. Do you have any questions for me?
Yeah, I do. What's the name of your daughter? You mentioned her
Cindy.
husband's name.
Cindy Faylauer. Good German name.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. You also, when you were describing the town of Ava, you didn't say what the long name was. Maybe they didn't tell you what that long name was.
They told me, but I forgot. It would be like Breckenridge,
Okay.
a long name like that.
Yeah.
And now I do not know if that is true or not, but it's fun to tell.
That's a great story from a place you come from, right? Wow, interesting. Let's go back and let's cover some ground. That was a great short summary of your life and walking through some really significant highlights. And so thanks for doing that. Let's talk about when you were a kid. You said you had 7 friends you palled around with and you went to all kinds of places. Mm-hmm. What would a normal or typical weekend in the summertime look like for you and your 7 friends? Okay,
we had 2 theaters in our little town of Ava. So that weekends, that's what we did. And, but most of the time we didn't have a swimming pool. So we went to the creek, Cowskin Creek, and that's where we went swimming. But most of us worked when we were in high school. So that we were busy. And I helped my mother in the garden. I worked. I didn't just play around all the time. Now, the high school kids, when we were in high school, when one would go to Central Methodist to college, we would all drive over to see her on the weekend. And that was a fun time. And there was about 2 or 3 of us, of the students that went there to Central Methodist. And that's what we did. There really was not much to do in Ava, but we were just friends. We'd go to the drugstore and have a Coke. They'd probably be glad when we left. But no, we were good kids. And my friend and I was laughing just yesterday. We said the only thing that we did that was wrong when we were growing up that we knew was bad. And one of my friends got a package of cigarettes, and we all decided we were going to smoke. Now, that was a bad thing we did. Well, I got so sick that I decided that was for me. But, that was the baddie thing.
Yeah.
And it was fun.
Do you remember any movies that you saw with your friends?
Oh, yes. Like we'd always see on Saturday, me and my cousins would go to the Westerns. But like Gone with the Wind,
Mm-hmm.
oh gosh, that was one that the whole school was turned out to see. What was the one that Clark Gable? You're too young for this.
I am too young. That's okay.
Yes, but there was one that was the first time that we had heard a cuss word in a movie.
Huh.
I see. I don't give a damn, is what he said. And, that was a shocker. So, no, I can't remember the names of them, but they were good movies.
Uh-huh.
Oh, movies. Black and white.
Black and white?
Yes.
Yeah.
And now they've turned them into color.
Yeah. Yeah. A long time ago they did that. You mentioned your sister's age. She's 97. But you didn't tell us your age. Can I ask?
Yes. Now, June the 6th,
I guess.
I will be 93. June the 10th, my sister will be 98.
Wow.
And she's super. She's in a care facility, but her mind is good. Her body is just wearing out. And so she says, I just want to go home to be with the Father. Mm. And I said, Sybil, she says, ask him. Just say, if it's your will, Father, let me come to be with you. And she's 5 years older than I am, but we've always been close. But as we've gotten older, we've gotten much closer. Hmm. And she and her husband had to move to Pennsylvania about 8 years ago, and he has now gone to be with the Lord. But she always lived in Springfield. They've lived in Springfield. Huh. And was a longtime member of the Wesley Methodist Church. Uh-huh. And I miss her, but thank goodness for telephones. And we have a good conversation. We pray together over the phone, and we share our spiritual blessings over the phone. And that helps us each to be closer together. And wish we could be now as we get older.
Right.
And,
do you have any particular memories of something that the two of you shared when you were young?
Oh, yes. Yeah. My mother and dad bought us a piano, and so we both took piano lessons on Saturday. And the teacher says, I want you to play a duet, you and Sybil. Well, sometimes on the piano, we would get to elbowing each other, but we played Country Gardens. I played the upper part, Sybil played the lower part, because that was more difficult. But I shall always remember that me and my sister, she was so beautiful. She had pretty platinum blonde hair that was always in place, and I had red hair that my mother fixed for me because I didn't really worry about my hair. But we did well at the recitals, playing together.
That's thank you. That's fun to think about, the two girls with different hair and trying to figure all that out. I've lived some of that.
Oh, have you?
Yeah, because I've got my two youngest kids are girls, and they've got different kind of styles of hair. So.
Oh, yes. And Sybil was dignified. She was always a queen of one of the high years in high school. I was a cheerleader, just was moving all the time, really wasn't interested in how I looked, even though I did look all right. But We were totally different. And I think that's why we get along.
Yeah, that's awesome. Church camp. Tell me,
Okay.
a lot of young people don't get to experience church camp.
Okay. When we went to I took the girls to Marshfield it was a Boy Scout and a church camp together. Let's see. Oh gosh, what was the name of it? It was a nice camp. They had no swimming pool up by the cabins. So we walked down a hill. I mean, it was a walk down to the swimming pool there. So Fred, the boy I was dating, met there. In fact, we were 15, and he said he had one class in Springfield teaching them how to rescue a person if they were having problems. And so he told me years later, he says, we would have been in trouble if someone had been, had to.
Uh-huh.
And I look back, I wasn't a very good counselor at that time because I was interested in him. But as I got older, I did a little bit better. But it was a good camp. And I think back I was so glad that I took those young girls at that age. They were junior high, just a little bit younger than I.
Yeah.
But they turned out to be beautiful young women. They really did. And it wasn't what I did. It was what the preacher said. Howard Woodruff. Does that name ring a bell? He was our pastor at the church during our high school years. And I thank God for that man. Oh, how wonderful he was to be there for us. I think he probably did more for the young people than he did for the older people, because they had 2 young children, and my friend and I would care for their children when they had to go to places of a night. And but he was good with the young people. He understood us, and he listened to us. He would take us to camp. He had a station wagon that was all wood, and that station wagon was filled with kids, and we'd sing 15 bottles of beer on the wall. Oh, gosh, poor man. He didn't say a thing. He just let us sing. But he was a wonderful influence on us.
Oh, that's fantastic. Everybody needs good influence around them.
Even though we sang that crazy song.
Yeah. Those are some of the typical things that kids do. You went to SMS for a year or half a year.
Half a year, huh?
What were you studying?
Oh, I was going to be a kindergarten teacher.
Okay.
And then that summer I met Leonard. He was he graduated from the University of Missouri in February, and I had met him the summer before, and we got married right after he graduated from the university. We were so poor. I look back, and we didn't care. We lived on love, and but he was a wonderful husband, and I miss him yet.
Yeah,
I miss him.
What kind of a degree did he have?
It was in ag.
Okay.
He was in Douglas County helping the farmers in Douglas County lay out terraces.
Yeah.
And what kind of feed to feed their cattle.
Okay.
I mean, I thought I imagine they thought he's just a green kid
Yeah.
telling them what to do. But Leonard went on to get his doctorate, and he became dean of extension at the university. He was there almost 38 years, and turned out he did a lot for the farmers in the Douglas County
Yeah.
and other counties.
And probably the whole state.
Oh, yes.
Right?
And he was director of extension for the state of Missouri. And so he wore 3 hats.
Did you all live in Columbia then for a while?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Until he decided to retire. And now, our first few years of marriage, we lived in different counties where he was county agent for the counties. And then they asked him to come to Missouri, the university. And so he went on and got his master's, and then he went on to Cornell. He was accepted at Cornell to get his doctorate. And I was proud of him.
Yeah.
I was proud of him. They asked him to stay at in Cornell. Oh, gosh, with all that snow. We enjoyed it. The kids learned to ski. Chris learned to ski. And we got to go to swimming at we lived in housing. And so we'd get to go swimming in the warm swimming pool on campus. And But anyway, he retired. He decided to retire early. And it scared me because I thought, we can't live on if he retires early. But he knew exactly what he wanted to do when he retired. And Chris has taken over what he said he was going to do. And that was buy land and raise alfalfa hay. And that's what we do.
Wow.
And no cattle. I had a big garden. We had fruit trees. But I'd never driven a tractor in my life. And I had my own tractor, and nobody else had better drive it. And I raked, it would be 58 acres by myself. And I did it well, and I didn't want Leonard to do it. I raked it. And then we rented other land to put up hay for the farmers. And so after he died, Chris and they worked together after Chris retired from military. And so Chris learned the trade. So now he and Georgia took over. And they love it. She loves the country just like I did. And I said I would never marry a short man. I married a short man. And I said I would never marry a man that had anything to do with agriculture. I did. So never say no, girls. You just oh, what a life we had.
Did you ever count up how many times you moved?
Yes. Chris said, Mom. Well, he had to, when he went into the ROTC, he had to tell how many times we had moved, what different counties. The other day, I was trying to count up all the towns we lived in. There was about 8. And he said, when we got to Columbia, Chris was a sophomore. And he we put the kids in lab school because they wanted to go to small school because that's what they were accustomed to. And he says, Dad, let's just live here long enough for me to graduate from high school. So we did. And the kids went on to college there, met their spouses there. And but anyway, our kids are happy. That's one thing. They met the ones that they were supposed to marry.
Yeah. Did In all those moves, did you ever have a favorite place where you lived?
Oh, yes, Butler, Missouri. I can't think. Dent County? I don't know what county it is.
What made it your favorite?
Well, we lived there 4 years, and we were just accepted. I loved the church. I was real active in the church. And I was real good friends with the minister and his wife. And they were older than Leonard and I, but we were good friends. We've always kind of been friends with the ministers and their wives. I don't know why, but we love them. And let's see. Well, the schools they were good.
Mm-hmm.
Now the kids were in lower school. Chris was like when we moved to New York. He was probably 10 because we lived there 2.5, 10, 11, 12. Because his voice changed while we were in New York, and but the schools were good. The people were beautiful, and when you live there long enough, you get to know people. And it was this county seat, of course, and the schools. Well, the town, it was a nice town. But I liked the church. I just liked the town.
Sure.
And we lived in the country, and we had 12 acres, and we did raise cattle there, and we raised hogs. I said, I didn't want ever to raise hogs. We raised hogs. And but boy, those pork chops were sure nice.
When you said that you grew up and you didn't want to ever marry somebody who was in agriculture, and then you find yourself in this whole different world, were you surprised by all that?
Well, yes, I was, because I wanted to marry someone that was in sports, basketball, baseball, football. That's the kind of guy I wanted to marry. But when I met Leonard and knew what he did, heck, it didn't bother me one bit. Oh,
wow.
that's the way love is.
Yeah. That's pretty special there. I'm glad to hear you talk like that. That's a whole lot of joy. So what did you do? What was your daily life like, or a typical day when you were raising kids? And
I was extremely active in school.
Mm-hmm.
If there was a musical on, or if there was a play on, and the parents put them on, I was there, because I liked theater. And the kids were so proud of me. We're so proud of you, Mama. Well, I look back and I think, honey, but we had 3 productions. It was good.
That's a lot of work.
It's a lot of work, and we put on a Roaring Twenties show, and it was a production. It was good, and I loved it. But what did I do? Okay, I was active in church, extremely active in church, and I was we lived in Butler, and I said when we lived in Butler, we lived out. So Leonard came home one evening with a box of baby chicks, little bitty, cuddly, sweet little chicks. I didn't like anything with feathers. And there I had a box of chickens, little baby chicks. Well, Cindy loved them. Well, they grew. So Leonard had to build a pen for them. And so my extension wives, it's a club for country women. And they knew I didn't know how to cut up a chicken. And I had to freeze them because there was so many of them. So one day they came over, and we spent the whole day peeling off feathers, stinky feathers, in that hot water. And they helped me cut them up. They helped me freeze them. And by the way, Leonard had to buy a freezer. And so that evening, I thought, I will never eat a chicken. Never. Because all I could do is smell the feathers being plucked off. And so, but we did later on. I enjoyed those. Oh, one time we had a calf butchered, and it was, the mother died, and Cindy took over the baby, and she bottle fed it. So that was her pet. That little calf followed her around like a puppy. So, okay, it got big enough that we had to sell it. Or I had to sell it, yeah. And one evening, we were eating hamburgers. And we had just had a calf butchered. And it wasn't that little calf. But Chris says, hey, sissy, you know what you're eating? You're eating your little baby calf. Oh, that little thing threw that hamburger down. I could have spanked him. He told her that was, see, what was the name of the little calf? She loved that little calf, but he said she was eating it. So we had fun.
That is a challenge for every farm kid.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
But we enjoyed our butchered food.
Yeah.
Oh, I want to tell you, we had T-bone steaks.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't had a T-bone steak, and I don't know when. Oh, our kids were eating T-bone steaks. Leonard and I ate T-bone steaks. Didn't think a thing about it.
Yeah.
And now look at the price of them.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Freistadt was a German town outside Butler that we'd take our cattle to, our hog, our pig, and our calf to have it butchered.
Yeah.
Beautiful people.
You didn't like having hogs?
They're smart. Now, let me tell you, they are smart critters. Leonard would come home on weekends while he was working on his master's, and through the week, he'd go back to Columbia. He would get out of sight, and those hogs would find the hole in the fence. Now, I'm not kidding, Jason. So here me and my 2 young children was chasing those hogs back into the fence, and they knew. They're smart. They tell us that they are smart.
They are smart.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
What kind of tractor did you drive?
Oh, gosh. John Deere mostly. And we had 3. We had 3 tractors. One for me, one for Leonard, and one for a different type of what we like, trimming the fence.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
He had a different kind of tractor.
Yeah.
And he used to hire the boys at Sparta in the ag department to help him before we had pickup things to pick up the bales. They bucked the bales. And one of the boys would drive the truck, and the other boys would pilot on the tractor. And Chris had some rules. No drinking, no smoking. That was dangerous. And not to talk loud. During the evening, we'd go to bed and have our windows open. And they would pick up hay when it was cool of a night. And he says, now, boys, don't you talk loud because your voice carries. And we could hear them. And we're a mile and a half mile and a half from Lindenlure. We could hear the music when the fraternity boys was having parties after class was out. But Leonard kept his machinery up to par. He'd put it away clean, and so it'd be ready for the next season. And so, but I loved driving my tractor. I could just sing as loud as I wanted to. And if they could hear, my neighbors could hear me, that's all right. I didn't care.
After Leonard died, did you imagine that you'd get married again?
Oh, I didn't. I told him one time, I said, Leonard, if I died, would you marry again? And he said, I probably would. And he said, would you? And I said, good heavens, no, never, never, never. And he said, Elda, never say never. No, I didn't. I knew Fred, though. I knew he'd gone in, that God had called him to be into the ministry. And he was a minister for 7 years in Wichita. But they would ask him to come over to the Quaker University there in Wichita.
Friends University?
Yes, Friends University. They'd ask him to come over and teach the history, Old and New history of the Old and New Testament. And finally he says, Donna, I think I am being called to be a teacher instead of a preacher. And so they did the fleece bit. And so he went on and got his doctorate. And they asked him to come back to Asbury. He had gone to 4 years there at the college, and they asked him to come back, and they said, the lady will retire in 1 year, but if you'll come back now, you can teach Greek in the college. And so he went back, and that's not an easy class to teach.
No, it's not.
As you know. And so that's what he did. And he and Donna, they were married 53 years. And they lived there in, he taught there at, what town
Asbury
is it?
Seminary? It's in Wilmore.
Wilmore. They lived there till he retired. And then they moved to Springfield. And they lived here 4 years. I didn't know he was around. And then by chance we met again. Didn't know each other. And I didn't have red hair, and he didn't look like a basketball player. But anyway, that's our story.
People are gonna need they're gonna need stitches after this.
Oh,
You got a way of telling stories and making people laugh. It's a fun thing.
well, I have really had a blessed life. Oh, my sister and I growing up, we had a wonderful life. Good parents, plenty of food. Mother made us pretty clothes. And then I married 2 wonderful husbands. And so Fred told me, he says, you and Donna are so opposite. Now, she was a teacher, so she helped him through college. And he's wept many of a tears saying, my sweet wife would be so tired at night, she didn't feel like cooking. But anyway, I did have 2 good husbands, and that makes a difference. But I knew him before I married him.
Yeah.
I don't know if I don't think I could have married someone I didn't know anything about his background. I knew they're well known in Marshfield, very respected people. But I just knew he was a Christian.
Yep.
And so that makes a difference too.
It does. What do you think about the future? What are you looking forward to in the future?
I pray a lot for my great-grandchildren, because I think the world is getting worse. I don't know when God's going to come and take over, when Jesus is going to come. Only God knows. But I think the world is, if we read in Scripture, things are happening that they're saying, they said in the Scripture. Look, read, study. When you see these signs, look up. So I do think sometime, I can't say soon because I don't know, that Jesus is going to come and take the church to be with him. And I look forward to that. I'm getting old enough, Jason, that I'm ready to go to be with the Lord. If he called me right now, I would be with him. I'd say, joy, joy. I've grown a lot since you and Spencer and Sheila have been preaching. You cannot imagine how my life has changed these last few years. I have read my Bible more. I love my Lord more because I've just gotten closer to him by what you guys preach to us. And I'm not saying that just to pat you on the back. I'm sincere. And I can see you growing spiritually. Oh, Jason, how you have changed. And others have said that. God's working in your life as well as Spencer's. And when you boys, young men, are up preaching, I'm sitting on the second row praying for you. We need to pray for you preachers because you need the Spirit to speak through you.
You are a dear.
Thank you.
You are a dear. Thank you for all that. Thank you for all that, for your prayers.
Oh, people don't realize. Now, I've got a son-in-law that's a pastor. My sister's son-in-law is a pastor. So we got them in the family. But I've always been close to the ministers. When we lived in Columbia, when a new pastor would come, they would stay at our house until they got settled because we wanted to help them. And we love them. I mean, you're God's work. If it wasn't for you, I don't know what would happen. But I appreciate you.
Oh, we appreciate you.
Very much.
Yeah. Well, we'd like to close with a final word of advice or a great sage comment from you. Have you got one?
Okay, let me get my tears taken care of. First of all, young people, if you have children, start now praying for them. Praying for, if it's God's will for them to marry, that God is preparing their hearts and the heart of the spouse. Oh, that's so important. I know my mother did that for my sister and I, and God heard us. Yes, I know there are divorces, and that's sad, but start now. But be sure and have them in church. Please have them in church and Sunday school so that they will know from the very beginning that Jesus loves them, that God is their Father, and they need him and he needs them.
Oh, thank you, Elda. You've made us laugh. You've shared some great wisdom with us. You've shared your life with us. And we really, really appreciate you.
Thank you. I've enjoyed being here.
Yeah, you are beloved. A big thank you to Elda for sharing her story. In listening, I hope you were inspired, encouraged, and challenged, and that you begin to behold the really cool people that are around you each and every day. The Really Cool People podcast is produced by Schweitzer Church, Springfield, Missouri. Taylor Likes is the executive producer and editor, and I'm your host, Jason Leininger. You can help us out by liking, reviewing, and sharing this podcast. And until next time, stay cool.